Hey, Pretty Girl Club. Welcome back to the social climbing series. I am in my bulk recording era right now, so if there are any requests that you guys have for videos, please go ahead and comment that down below. But are you trapped in a one-dimensional black identity? Are you trapped in a monocultural black identity? Have you noticed that your culture has started to become a cage? Because that is something that I've noticed, especially when it comes to women with inferiority complexes. Part of the reason why a lot of people in black culture look up to exoticals is because a lot of them are trying to attain what I call a fluid identity. So, something that they will say is, "Oh, you guys are jumping in and out of blackness." First of all, that's a black cultural saying, jumping in and out of blackness, the idea that that's bad. It's bad to be multicultural. It's bad to engage with other people. It's bad to look like you're from another background. It's bad to be in a space full of non-black people because if you do, you're a token. Those types of talking points, those are monocultural talking points. Those talking points come from people who feel like the only way to be black is to always be around black people, to act like a stereotypical black person. And if you don't, then you are, quote, acting white. That's another monocultural talking point. So I've noticed that a lot of unambiguous women, what their problem is when it comes to things like dating or multiculturalism, a lot of them, because they were raised monocultural, I've noticed sometimes they have a harder time socializing and they have a harder time kind of fitting in a multicultural world. And so now, with them even trying to date multiculturally, I've noticed that one of the main reasons they're unsuccessful is because some of their actual belief systems are holding them back. It's literally causing them to not be able to open up fully. So I just wanted to talk about this subject because I know that I have a lot of black exoticals on here who are monoracial and monocultural, or maybe that's your background. Oh, by the way, the first thing I want to say is a person can grow up monoculturally and they can become multicultural when they're older. So just because you grew up a certain way, your past does not determine your future. I've noticed that's another like toxic talking point that they say in the black community, like, "Oh, don't forget where you came from." What do you mean don't forget where they came from? And then whenever you ask them like, "What, how can I show that I appreciate where I came from?" Whenever you ask them that, they can never answer, but it's almost like they have this talking point of don't forget where you came from, and the only way to show that you're down or humble is by going back to the hood. Of course, if you get money, you have to give money back to the worst neighborhood that you came from in like a black city. And then you still have to go back and hang out in the hood. And they have this mindset of you have to stay within this culture, otherwise you're a sellout. I noticed that's another gaslighting talking point. That's an anti-multicultural talking point. All of these things that they're saying, they are anti-multicultural beliefs. That's why you see a lot of unambiguous women having so much cognitive dissonance and imposter syndrome when they get into multicultural spaces. It's because they have a lot of anti-mixed race beliefs, anti-interracial beliefs. By the way, I'm going to be making up a lot of words during this series because I just can't think of any other way to describe it. But it's like they'll try to guilt trip you into sticking with just their culture. And then if you don't, let's say that you decide to no longer speak with like African American vernacular English. Maybe you want to, I don't know, maybe you kind of want to refine your accent or something. I'm just making up different scenarios that people try to do. Have you ever noticed that a lot of monocultural women feel the need to code switch? So code switching is something that happens when a person is not multicultural. They're not multicultural. They have to switch code, like they have to actively put in a lot of work to try to, I guess, fit in with whatever culture they're in. Whereas if you're multicultural, you're used to being around different people all the time. Maybe you grew up in a city where, you know, there were no black people. There were no fellow black people. So you're not monoculturally black. And by the way, when I talk about monoculturalism, the only reason I'm emphasizing blackness is because this channel is a sociology channel and we focus on black culture. So that's why you don't see me making videos about like monocultural whiteness, monocultural Asian people. So just for the new people on this channel, that's why I'm talking about this subject. But if you're already multicultural, you're actually not code switching. You're just being your natural self. And the people who accuse you of code switching, that's usually a form of projection. So usually those people, maybe they grew up monoculturally black or something. And so when they see you like answering the phone at work and you sound super professional, they'll be like, "Oh, you're just trying to code switch." And it's like, "Okay, why are you mad that I know how to speak professionally on the phone?" Like, what's the point of them saying that? Let's be honest. What's the point of somebody even saying that to you? They're saying that to you because they want you to feel the same imposter syndrome that they feel when they're in a room full of white people. And this is also why when a lot of them talk about like divesting and swirling and this is my lifestyle and I date all these different races of men, I don't actually believe them, especially based on their talking points about biracials. I definitely don't believe them because it's like, okay, anybody who has a hatred of multicultural people, you can't convince me that they're doing well in a multicultural setting. They're not. A lot of unambiguous people practice self stereotyping. So it's like you're stereotyping yourself. You're almost putting yourself in this cultural box and you feel like you can't get out of it without being an imposter. So it's almost as if you're going through a sense of culture shock. So, okay, for example, everybody goes through culture shock, especially if you are multicultural. So if you were raised multiracial or around a lot of different people, you have already gone through culture shock probably as a child. So you've already got that, you've already kind of overcome that quote unquote trauma. It's not a trauma, but it's like you've already overcome that. But for a lot of women who are only in a monocultural black setting, if they wait until they're 35 to get out of like black spaces and to try to explore the world a little bit more, and let's say they start dating and they go on a date with a man who's white, she's actually experiencing culture shock on that date. So that's not a good, that environment, like that sort of mindset and going through culture shock in the midst of a date or going through culture shock within a relationship, that's not a good time to be navigating like love and romance and flirting and whatever. Like when people think of relationships, usually they're trying to do something where it's like fun. It's supposed to be fun. You're supposed to feel loved and cherished and all that stuff. So the problem that I've seen with a lot of monocultural black women is that they're using dating as a way to introduce themselves to multiculturalism. And that's a very bad thing. Like they're going to have a disadvantage. It's going to make them extra awkward on the dates. It's going to make them extra awkward maybe in the workplace. I've noticed that there are some people in the black community where the only time they've ever been around non-black people is at work. So basically it was forced. So you had to pay them in order for them to tolerate people of other backgrounds. And let's be honest, there are a lot of people in the black community that are very prejudiced against non-black people. And I've talked about this before. And obviously, if you are a multiracial black person, you've experienced this before. So I see a lot of people, they talk about anti-blackness and stuff. But a lot of people within the black community, they won't address that they are anti-mixed race or anti-Asian, whatever the other race is that they don't like. And so sometimes when they go out into the world and they're trying to social climb, they have a hard time doing that. And by the way, when I use that phrase social climbing, what I'm saying is living the social life of your dreams. And by the way, the Exotical space is the first space on YouTube to even speak about social climbing from a neutral or positive perspective. Any other content creators that you hear using that phrase, social climbing, they've been influenced by the Exotical space. But I see a lot of them talking about leveling up and social climbing, and then when they describe leveling up, they're actually describing multiculturalism. Because when you ask them, how do you want to level up? They'll be like, oh, I want to move to a nice neighborhood. Okay, nice neighborhoods tend to be multicultural or majority non-black. And then they'll be like, oh, I want to go to this nice university, or I want to move out of the country. I want to travel the world. Okay, so you're going to be around non-black people, so you're going to have to practice a form of multiculturalism. So it's safe to say that multiculturalism is the ultimate social level up. Just generally speaking, a lot of people's standard of living is to be in a multicultural type of setting. I've never heard somebody say, oh, I don't ever want to be around anybody of any other ethnicity, and that's my version of leveling up. I've never heard anyone say that. And usually if someone says that, they will actually get called racist or prejudiced. So it's safe for me to say that being multicultural is a requirement for leveling up. But a lot of women, like in the unambiguous community, instead of paying their exotical tax, instead of admitting that a lot of our talking points are actually correct, instead of watching the exotical channels, they're too scared or too threatened or intimidated by the exotical space to learn from us. And that's fine, because I don't want that audience anyway. But instead of them actually learning from multicultural people, they're waiting until they're desperate. They wait until they've already suffered enough traumas in the Black community. They wait until they have trauma stacked within the Black community for 25 years. And by the way, when I say that they're stacking traumas in the Black community, I understand that every aspect of the Black community is not negative. There's a such thing as Black excellence. There's like the Black excellence part of the Black community, and then there's like the Blackistan version of the Black community, which is what I talk about on this channel. So I've noticed that the quote unquote Blackistan part of the Black community, generally speaking, that tends to be the poorer Black people. So these are the people where they couldn't afford to go to the HBCUs. They couldn't afford to live in the suburbs. Maybe they came from a home where their mom was in survival mode, or, look at their talking points online. A lot of them talk about how they have been abandoned by their fathers or whatever. They've got a lot of generational curses in their family. So that's what I'm talking about. And when it comes to my experience with Blackness, thankfully, I was not raised to hate Blackness. I wasn't raised, I wasn't even aware of a lot of these issues, really, until I became an adult. My main experience with Black culture was at an HBCU. That was my main experience with Blackness. So obviously that's a different type of Blackness. I would call that more of the Black excellence vibe. Think of like Michelle Obama, those types of women, and like maybe like a Barack Obama type of guy. So that's a different aspect of Black culture. And I've noticed that people who come from that culture, people who come from Black excellence culture, they tend to be more open to the exotical space, first of all. And then they also tend to be more open to multiculturalism, because they recognize the benefits of being well liked by other people. They recognize the benefits of getting along with people from different races and backgrounds. And so I've noticed that, generally speaking, the more affluent Black people, in a lot of cases, they are less prejudiced against mixed race people. That's just my personal experience, though. I'm not saying it's true in every case. But another thing that holds a lot of people back is this mindset of, I have to work twice as hard to get half as much. That has got to be one of the most disgustingly anti-Black sayings I've ever heard in my life. I can't believe that people actually live based on that. That's so disappointing. I feel so sad for Black people that genuinely believe that. That sounds horrible. Like, I'm surprised a lot of people are not suicidal, honestly. If I believe that actual talking point, that I have to work twice as hard just to get half the money, just to get half the beauty, just to get half the validation, just to get half the attention, I have no idea how some of these people are functioning in society. This is why I say that it's very mentally ill. I feel like a lot of the Black community, I think sometimes there's mental illness embedded in there. And a lot of people are like, oh, well, it comes from slavery. Okay, so I don't want to have a slave mindset. Who gonna check me? I don't want to think like a slave. I don't want to pretend like I'm still a slave. I don't want to be a slave to somebody else. And it's so funny because they're constantly blaming slavery, and then they're living their lives as a social slave to the white man. They're over here making YouTube videos saying, I'm angry because white men didn't swipe on me on the dating app. I'm mad because these old white men are not choosing me. So it's like, sis, your slavery mindset is actually still there, and it's still showing. The only difference is that now it's showing in terms of dating, or maybe it's showing in terms of beauty standards. Let's talk about that. A lot of them are a slave to Eurocentric beauty standards. I'm like, what is this obsession with Eurocentric beauty standards, and who looks more Eurocentric and who doesn't? And I've noticed some of them will have this performative mindset where they're trying to pretend like they have an Afrocentric beauty standard. They pretend like they have that beauty standard online, but in real life, they actually have more of a multicultural beauty standard. But then, of course, they can't acknowledge multicultural or multiracial women's beauty because there's a scarcity mindset where they feel like, oh, if I say she's pretty and she has curly hair or she happens to have light skin or something, then I'm being a colorist, texturist, and featurist. So that's another way that they're actually holding themselves back socially, because Then when they go into a non-black setting where everybody has curly hair and light skin, if they're going into a white setting or an Arab setting or something where the phenotypes are more adjacent to mixed people, they're going to have a hard time complimenting. By the way, complimenting and affirming people, that's a part of connecting with others. So if you go to YouTubers like Chrissy, if you go to content like hers, you will actually hear her telling unambiguous black women not to compliment people. You'll hear her talking about how Indians are colorist, which is a stereotype. You'll hear her saying things like, oh, Indians are colorist, so you can date them, but like don't compliment them. Do you see the cognitive dissonance there? There is a lot of cognitive dissonance in the monocultural black community. And by the way, every culture has pros and cons. So I don't like when pro-black female hotep YouTubers, kind of like Chrissy, I don't like when they come on here and try to pretend as if the black community has no flaws whatsoever. And I'm one of the only content creators. The Exotical space, we are some of the only content creators that are bold enough and courageous enough to call out the flaws within the black female hotep community. That's what I call it. It's like being a black female hotep. Afrocentric beauty standard, monocultural blackness, centering your life around blackness. And that's fine if you want to do that. But it's like, if you're centering your life around blackness, that means that you have no choice but to really stay within black culture. So that would mean dating black men or living in black neighborhoods, moving to a black city. So a lot of them talk the talk, but they don't know how to walk the walk. And that's why I call it being performative. They're being performative in terms of being Afrocentric. Another negative aspect of black culture that you would have to let go as a monocultural exotical who's trying to become multicultural is the femcel mindset. I've noticed there's a femcel and an incel mindset within some black women and black men because a lot of them have been told no one wants you, no one likes you, you're at the bottom because of your skin color, your hair texture, your facial features, or because of your blackness. Like even with the men, a lot of people tell those men, oh, you're going to be profiled by the police, like people are going to try to make you like a criminal, you may get falsely accused. So a lot of them are underprivileged in terms of dating. And then also with the black men, a lot of the black men, obviously, we know that according to their own talking points, that a lot of them are missing a father figure. And so a lot of them have not learned masculinity. They didn't have good, strong, black, masculine role models, which is why you see a lot of black men clinging to content creators like Kevin Samuels or alpha male strategies. I think that's kind of the newer version of like a Kevin Samuels. He just came across my algorithm recently. So you'll see a lot of black men kind of clinging to these men like Fresh and Fit, or, you'll see them clinging to those men because a lot of those men did not have role models. Have you ever noticed that within the black community, a lot of times there's this addiction to advice channels. There's an addiction to these level up channels. There's an addiction to searching outside of yourself for what to do next. Okay, that's a sign of a culture that has not had a lot of guidance. And you guys know me. I'm always going to take it back to the childhood, baby. I'm always going to take it back to who your parents are. So a lot of people from the underprivileged black community, if they had a mother and father who were both in survival mode, so they're just trying to, pay the bills. They're just another black man caught up in the mix trying to make $1 out of 15 cents. That was their dad. And then maybe their mom is in survival mode. She's already struggling with like postpartum or all kinds of issues. So a lot of people from backgrounds like that, they don't even have the basic emotional tools that are required to start a business, to social climb, to date somebody, or to be a good parent themselves. And that's another thing too. There is a devaluing of emotions. Have you ever noticed that sometimes in the black community, they devalue emotions or they simply don't believe in emotions at all? Part of this comes from the Christian socialization in the black community. And by the way, I'm really talking about the African American community because that's the perspective that I'm coming from. So in the African American community, I've noticed there's this deep-rooted Christian culture. And we all know that in Christian culture, a lot of them do not even believe in psychology. They don't emphasize psychology or like going to therapy and stuff like that. They're definitely not talking about sociology. And if they do talk about sociology, it's always from this negative perspective. Oh, everybody hates you because you're dark skinned. You're going to be last to get married. You guys are the least preferred. if you're a black man, you're going to get killed by the police. So a lot of times they focus on like social injustices, or they spend a lot of time focusing on that. And I'm not saying that you can't talk about that. I think that you should be able to talk about everything. But the only issue is that if a person is trying to social climb, if they want to start a business, if they want to move somewhere, if they want to break generational curses, you have to have a different mindset than the people who came before you. And so this is why I tell you guys all the time, Exoticals, I am not an advice channel, because I don't want you to just blindly follow me or anybody else. I want you guys to be critical thinkers. I want you guys to think for yourselves. I don't want you to agree with everything I'm saying or doing, because that is weird. That shows low self-esteem. You don't even agree with everything your parents do or say. You don't even agree with everything your sister does, or your brother, or your coworkers. So I don't like this culture where on the internet you have a lot of black content creators where they're speaking from this perspective of almost being high and mighty, like they are the ultimate authority on a certain thing. And then I've actually seen sometimes where a person will come on that creator's live stream, and then like that the person will disagree with the host, like they'll disagree with the content creator. Then the content creator will basically scold or berate their own subscribers into submission. Have you ever noticed that in the black culture? There's kind of this there's this mindset of using dominance, like dominating and subjugating other people and kind of beating them into submission. So they may not be doing it physically, but they're doing it verbally. Okay, that's a slave mindset, because you're doing the same thing to other black people that slave masters once did to you. Well, not to you, but like to your ancestors. You're doing that same thing. You're trying to beat people into submission. The only difference is that instead of a whip and chains, you're doing it verbally. So you're discouraging other black people from creating their own content, their own talking points. You try to bully and intimidate and scare people off the internet, or you try to make it like beauty is a monolith, or social climbing is a monolith, or even decentering men is a monolith. You know, if you have a boyfriend, you're not decentered, you're a pick-me. There's only one way to decenter men. That is actually cult-like thinking. So it's hilarious how people try to accuse the Exoticals of like, oh, you guys are a cult. And it's like, no, the black community, a lot of these talking points within the black community, especially in online spaces, that is actually cult-like, because you've got different creators who are taking on this mindset of it's my way or the highway. What culture do you know has parenting styles like that? Have you been raised by a black parent or grandparent where they had that same mindset? Okay, that's a cultural mindset. It's my way or the highway. And then if a person is like sensitive, let's say you are emotionally sensitive or you start crying or something, then there's this talking point of, you know, stop crying. You know, you're just shedding your light-skinned tears, or nobody cares about your tears. And it's like, okay, where did they get that cultural talking point from? Stop crying, or I'm going to give you a reason to cry. What culture did that come from? So do you see how their cultural backgrounds are coming out in their talking points? It's coming out in their content style. And so then you've got an entire generation of black people where maybe they're trying to break the stereotype. Maybe they're trying to like do something different with their lives. And so they need to become multicultural. But within the monocultural black community, you've taught them to hate other cultures. You've told them that white people don't like them because of their skin and their hair. You told them that Hollywood is colorist, texturist, and futurist, and that's run by white people. You told them that the music industry is colorist and hates them, and that's also run by white people. You told them that the people who own the beauty supply stores don't like them, and that's run by Asian people. You told them that the Indian community is filled with brown people who don't like the dark-skinned community. So it's like, within the black community, there are tons of talking points. There are tons of negative talking points about every single non-black person. You've even told them that like light-skinned people think they're better, or, you know, so then there's like this conflict within the black community that you've got between who's light-skinned, who's dark-skinned, who has light eyes, who has dark eyes, whose hair is silky, whose hair is an afro. So there's a whole bunch of like division. And so it's creating a culture of chaos. So you expect me to believe that an entire generation of men and women that come from a culture of chaos, you expect me to believe that suddenly they are experts on leveling up? You expect me to believe that suddenly they're so preferred by people in the white community when we know that that is statistically false? And also, I want to talk about how some of the mindsets that they project onto black women. I've noticed a lot of black people, they tell black women that, oh, people are going to stereotype you as angry. And so then you'll have these black women who experience anger. Anger is actually a normal emotion. It's a normal emotion that people are going to feel. So you're telling black women that basically people are going to stereotype them as angry and having an attitude. So you're teaching black women that it's bad to feel anger or to express anger. That's actually extremely unhealthy. If you are angry, you should have a way to release your anger, like in a healthy way. So there's this culture of causing women, they're instilling fear in black women. Oh, I don't want to be seen as the angry black woman. But then what you have is you have a culture of black women where they don't want to express their anger through violence. Well, some of them still do. But like generally speaking, let's say you're in the workplace and they don't want to express their anger through violence. But what will happen is the anger may turn into things like envy. It turns into things like cattiness. It turns into things like gossip, like extreme social competition. So that's still an expression of anger. If you get mad, if you say to somebody light skinned, oh, you didn't speak to nobody. Oh, I'm cutting you off because you didn't say hi to me yesterday at the lunch table. Okay, that's still an expression of anger. So that anger is going to come out one way or another. But one of their cultural disadvantages is they're not allowed within black culture, they're not allowed to feel or express anger in a healthy way. And so that a lot of them bottle up their anger and then it eventually explodes in random places. So for a lot of them, it'll explode when she becomes a mother. Maybe she projects her anger onto her child. How many of you exoticals have been raised by maybe a black mother or grandmother or father or grandfather where they randomly took out their anger on you? So that's one of the ways that the anger ends up exploding. Another way that it explodes is in relationships. I'm thinking of Olandria off of Love Island. Olandria was my favorite person the entire time, all the way up until about episode 26, when she randomly blew up on this guy who was never showing interest in her in the first place. So that's an example of random anger explosions because she didn't know they're not taught how to regulate their emotions, basically. A part of multiculturalism, like your emotions really tie into every aspect of your life. And I feel like in the black community, a lot of them don't understand that. And so that's why you've got a lot of extremely emotionally unhealthy people coming out of the black community. And so whenever you're trying to social climb and all that, you're going to go through emotional triggers. So telling black women, for example, that like, oh, everybody's going to think you're angry, so don't let them stereotype you. You're teaching black women to be scared of stereotypes. So first of all, you're instilling fear in those women. And then you're telling them that like anger is bad and like you can't feel anger or like you can't express that in a healthy way. So you've got these women who are constantly going through an internal battle within themselves because maybe they have a valid reason. Oh, that's another thing. A lot of black people's emotions have been invalidated. And so they'll go out into the world and they're feeling these emotions. They're feeling anger or envy or whatever, resentment, but then they don't know how to get it out of their body. They don't know how to get that anger out of their system. And so what happens is something will trigger them, such as a pretty girl at the bar. And then, next thing you know, she's throwing drinks or something, or maybe a relationship will trigger them. Next thing you know, they're in a domestic dispute. And so believe it or not, a part of like one of the foundational things that you need in order to even social climb or be multicultural, level up, before you talk about any of that, you have to have basic mental health. You have to have basic emotional regulation skills. So a lot of people, they go into the workplace, for example. Have you ever noticed a lot of black men and women sometimes do bad in the workplace? Well, part of that, I'm not saying that people can't be racist in the workplace because they can, but I have been around black people before where they accuse somebody of being racist when they're actually not. Like, for example, let's say you're a black woman and you move to like Idaho or somewhere where there's like a larger white population. Maybe you're trying to level up or something and you get a job opportunity over there. And then you go somewhere where there are people who have not come across a lot of black women. And so they ask you questions based out of curiosity, not because they're trying to be racist, but because they are genuinely curious and they think that Like they're admiring you. I've noticed a lot of black women, they actually mistake admiration for fetishization. They mistake admiration for racism. For example, if you get your hair done and you walk into the office and somebody says, "Oh wow, I like your hair," or they ask you a question like, "Oh wow, how long did it take to style your hair?" If you're comfortable with that person, you wouldn't be offended because you guys are already friends, right? If you're multicultural, anybody who's actually multicultural knows that white people are not going to be experts on black people. That is a basic, like, why would I expect a white person? Or if you have a white boyfriend, I've seen a lot of women on Reddit, a lot of black women, they're saying, "Oh my God, my white boyfriend, he was questioning my hair. My hair's been in a weave and he thought the weave was my hair and then he saw me take it out and now he's asking questions about my natural hair." Well, yeah, sis, people who don't have 4C hair, they don't understand everything about 4C hair. So obviously they're going to ask questions. That's a basic part of being multicultural. You go into a multicultural setting knowing, hey, I'm not an expert on Asian people. I'm not an expert on this culture that I didn't grow up around. So the same is true for white people. That's why some of them ask questions, or Asian people or whatever. That's why sometimes they ask questions. It's not always out of a malicious type of thing, but I've noticed there's this hypervigilance in the black community because they've been taught to fear colorism, texturism, featureism, and racism. So that's one of the biggest things that holds people back, actually, is this fear of the isms. So they're scared that when they go to the bar that like somebody's going to be colorist. They're scared that somebody might be racist. So they're extra nervous at the job interview because they feel like, oh my God, they're probably like looking at my skin or my. So do you see how it creates a culture of insecurity? Do you see how the inferiority complexes are born? Every culture has pros and cons. Every culture has inferiority complexes within it. And that includes unambiguous black women. I feel like that's the only demographic on YouTube where everybody's too scared to talk about the flaws within that culture. But guess what? We're talking about it over here. So I think within the black community, sometimes there's this, there's almost this validation starvation that the women and men go through. Just if you look at the family structure. So go watch content like Cynthia G's, where they talk about how a lot of the children are born out of wedlock and stuff like that. So if you were raised, maybe you were raised in a single parent home, or maybe your family is dysfunctional. So that's already a certain level of validation starvation right there from childhood. So you're already starting off with less validation than the average 5-year-old that comes from, where the parents are investing in them or something. Okay, so you've got a group of people where they're already going through validation starvation, and then let's say they grow up and they become a young adult. So if they're a validation starved child, what types of behaviors do you think they're going to have as a young adult? They're going to start doing more extreme things for attention, such as committing crimes in the case of men. Because, he didn't get attention. He didn't get attention for his masculinity as a child. His masculinity wasn't valued. Oh, and let's talk about that as well. So I do believe in the concept of like femininity and masculinity kind of balancing each other out. And so I have noticed that a lot of black people, there is a devaluing of black parenthood just in general. So I've noticed a lot of black men talk shit about black women, like single mothers. And then I noticed a lot of black women talk shit about black fathers, because they'll do that to multiracial people. They'll be like, oh, you have a black father, so he was dusty and he was colorist and he was this and that. And it's like, okay, tell me, just admit that you devalue black parenting. Just admit it. You don't value black families. And it's like, okay, so how are you going to have that much of an inferiority complex and then try to go out into the world and create your own healthy family structure? It's a complete lie. But yeah, I think there's a devaluing of black fatherhood and black motherhood. And so this is why the cycle keeps on continuing. This is why even if you do see these women get into interracial relationships, or the men as well, there still is a certain level of dysfunction. It's like a generational curse that keeps on happening. So the reason why I'm talking about this is because I want the Exoticals, who are monoracially black, to let go of these toxic teaching points that they promote in the black community. Everybody's going to hate you because you're black. Everybody's racist. Everybody is not racist. Every white person is not racist. Every company is not racist. Everybody's not colorist. People don't care. Like, if you're dark skinned, I promise you, other people do not give a fuck about your skin tone as much as you think they do. I promise. And I will say, obviously I'm probably speaking from a place of privilege or whatever, but it's like, especially if you're in a multicultural environment, nobody's looking at skin tones and measuring it like, oh, how dark is this person? Oh, this person's slightly lighter than that person. I'm just going to be 100% honest. I've only ever seen black people, monocultural black people, doing shit like that. Just randomly bringing up, how light skinned is this person? Oh, she got darker. She got a tan. She got this. She got that. Oh, well, you only picked her because she's a little bit lighter than the other person. When you go into multicultural settings, skin tone is not as much of a talking point as it is within the black community. That's another cultural difference that a lot of black women get shocked by when they try to like date outside of their culture and stuff. So that's why I'm talking about it for the exoticals who are fully black, and maybe you were monocultural. This whole talking point of colorism, texturism, and featureism, it's not as popular in other communities, just generally speaking. And I know there are going to be some people who comment and say, oh, well, I'm Asian and, they have colorism. Yeah, but do they have, I've never seen an entire niche or channel, Asian channels with hundreds of thousands of subscribers that specifically talks about being dark skinned and how they're competing with light skinned Asians and then celebrating the unaliving of light skinned Asians. I've never seen that on YouTube. So no, it's actually not the same. But where does that division come from? Again, it comes from the unprocessed anger. And that's another thing too. Another cultural phenomenon that holds them back from being multicultural is this mindset where it's like, the only emotions you're allowed to express are anger, violence, basically the negative emotions. You're only allowed to express those emotions. That's the only way you're allowed to get attention. But when it comes to expressing sadness, for example, crying, I've noticed a lot of people in black culture, they'll make fun of people for crying. They make fun of people for crying. And I noticed that, I'll use Love Island as an example again. A lot of people made fun of like Huda for crying, or like just random women who are crying because maybe they're sad, or like people had to go home and they're like, oh, they're being dramatic. Why are you crying over this? This is not a big deal that they're going home. Oh, your relationship was toxic anyway. And it's like, wait a minute. Why are you demonizing people expressing emotions? That's a sign that you've grown up in an emotionally neglectful environment. And that leads me to the next point. In the black community, there is a lot of emotional neglect. This could be parents towards their children. Again, you guys know me, I naturally tend to blame parents. Anything bad that happened to you under 18, generally speaking, your parents are going to be responsible for that. But anything 18 and older, now it's on you. So you can't help where you came from. You can't help how you were born, but you can help yourself as an adult. So I'm only talking about this because I want the Exoticals to take their power back and to not allow toxic cultural talking points to cause them to have an inferiority complex. And have you ever noticed too, there's this thing where it's like, if you're black, you have to be a social justice warrior. So I've noticed that some content creators, the way that they come against dark-skinned women in the exotical space, the way they come against my dark-skinned supporters is they will make videos like, do you think ignoring colorism is the solution? And it's like, okay, so they're trying to guilt trip you. So because of the color of your skin, you now are required to talk about colorism all the time. You're now required to be an advocate. You're required to be a social justice warrior fighting against colorism. And it's like, everybody's not an activist. I say that on my channel. I am not Rosa Parks. I am not Coretta Scott King. I'm not Michelle Obama. I'm not Barack Obama. So I didn't come on this YouTube channel so I could be a social justice warrior. But I've noticed in some black communities, they will actually pressure you to be that social justice warrior. And then if you don't, they will call you things like a token. Oh, well, you're just the token. I've actually noticed they do this with, like, I don't know, black politicians or black people that are like in the news sector, kind of like Candace Owens, Barack Obama, Condoleezza Rice, anybody who's like black and they're in kind of a majority white space. A lot of people will automatically be like, oh, you're a token. You only got there. You're a DEI hire. I noticed they're actually doing that with the new CEO of Red Lobster. It's a black guy. And people are like, oh, well, you're just a DEI hire. Okay, that's an inferiority complex talking point. And I'm not saying that like that doesn't happen, but to negate somebody and say, oh, you only got to where you are because of your skin color. Okay, that's a cultural talking point from the Black community. That's a monocultural Black talking point. You only got to where you are because you're dark skinned. You only got to where you are because you're light skinned. Oh, you're just the token Black person. You don't actually qualify. What they're saying to you is you do not actually qualify for what you have. You don't deserve. You're unworthy. There's this big overarching theme of like, you are unworthy for whatever accolades you have. Oh, well, Beyonce, she only got to where she is because she's in the Illuminati. It's like, okay, you literally have an excuse for every Black person. Like, why can't somebody just be both Black and talented? Why can't they just be both Black and smart? Why is it always, oh, well, they only got there because they're light skinned. They only got there because of the Illuminati. They only got there because they're a DEI hire. Do you see where it's like there's this culture where they have a problem for every solution? So on the one hand, they're begging for representation, and then when they finally get the representation, it's never good enough, and you only got there because you're light skinned anyway. So do you see how frustrating that is? This is why I try to tell you guys that you want to have that internal locus of control. Because listening to all these voices, Black or not, oh, and that's another thing, trusting people just because they're Black. I don't do that shit. Just because somebody's Black, it doesn't mean that their talking points are correct. Just because you're a Black woman, I've noticed that's the main group where you can't say anything that disagrees with them. It's like, just because you're an unambiguous dark-skinned Black woman, it doesn't mean you're correct on all of your talking points. It doesn't mean I have to agree with you. Oh, well, if you disagree with me, you're colorist. You think I'm scared of being called a colorist? I don't have that same insecurity that you have. So I'm not scared if people think that I'm colorist, texturist, featurist, etc. Clearly, there are tens of thousands of people that disagree and that support me. So it's like, I don't allow external opinions and external insecurities from my cultural backgrounds. I don't allow those things to get inside of me. I don't internalize those things. Every culture has different cultural insecurities. So like with Black culture, I just named some of them. So if you're a Black exotical, do you have some of these cultural insecurities? I know that I've dealt with all of these talking points. Everything that I've said, it's literally coming from memory. It's coming from my own experiences. So those are things that you would have to overcome if you're trying to shed this stereotypical kind of downtrodden Black woman trope. You know how it's funny because I've noticed that they will find a way to make anything negative. So for example, if you're sad and downtrodden, then you're like the Black woman who's at the bottom. And then if you are more resilient, then you are the strong Black woman, which is also bad. So do you see how it's like, no matter what, there's no proper way to be Black. There's no proper way to do it. So that's why I just threw out all of the mindsets in general, and I just created my own internal standard of, what is my cultural standard for myself? Do I want to be monoculturally Black? Do I want to be monoculturally something else? Do I want to be multicultural? So what is my internalized standard of multiculturalism? That's something I had to find within myself. Because if I just rely on random other people, I'm never going to be good enough. I'm never going to fit enough stereotypes. And also, even in Black excellence culture, I just made up that phrase, Black excellence culture. So these are the affluent Black people. These are the Black people from the suburbs. They're from the South. They've got generational wealth. These are kind of the Jack and Jill Black people. These are the fraternity and sorority Black people. These are like the pastor's kids and the people where their family started a church, their family started a business, those types of Black people. Even within Black excellence culture, there's this pressure to break every stereotype. Where it's like, oh no, you're a part of the talented 10th. I don't know if I told you guys this, but like I went to an HBCU. So at my HBCU, did you know that they actually taught that talking point of the talented 10th? Like there were actual professors there with PhDs who genuinely believed in the talented 10th talking point. And they literally told us in the classroom, you guys are the only Black people that are gonna make a difference, basically. 90% of Black people are gonna be like fuck ups. And you guys are the only ones that are gonna like be something. And so you are now required to become the new leaders of the Black community because you guys are the cream of the crop. You're the best of the best. So not only is there a little bit of, it's almost like a classism type of thing that's kind of mixed in there, but then there's also this pressure that the Black excellence culture puts on you as an educated black person, or maybe you're a mixed race, maybe you're a black person with some sort of privilege. That's what I should call it. The black people with the privilege. Any sort of privilege, colorism, texturism, featureism, education, classism, pretty privilege, whatever. You're automatically thrown into this black excellence category. And so one of the negative sides of that is now the pressure is on you to open the door for other black people. Like if you're light skinned, have you ever noticed that? They will say to random rappers like Nicki Minaj or whoever, they'll be like, oh, she didn't open the door for dark skinned black women. It's like, what the heck? So now people can't even have careers without having to open the door for other random people. And it's like, wait a minute, how do you know that she even got through the door? How do you know that she's not struggling herself? Like, why is it that the weight of the black community is placed on our shoulders as the quote unquote privileged black people? And then a lot of times when you try to reach back to help the underprivileged black people, then they bite the hand that feeds them. They turn on you. They decide that, your talking points are a little too extreme. So now I want to resort to things like talking shit about you. I want to try to smear you because, you're a sellout. I don't like you anymore because you're no longer relatable. So I feel like a lot of people from black excellence culture, I think there's a lot of trauma there. There's a lot of betrayal trauma there. And we talk about that a lot on this channel. There's a lot of betrayal trauma because part of you feels like you are betraying your own people. Part of you feels guilty. That's another huge part of being considered a privileged black person. You've got a lot of guilt because you weren't born dark-skinned, or you weren't born with the 4C hair, or you were not born poor. Whatever it is, whatever your privileges are, there's almost this guilt that the rest of the black community places on you. And so then that's why they try to pressure you to speak to them. They'll be like, well, you didn't speak to nobody. You just walked past me. Oh, you think you're better than me. Oh, you think you're somebody now because you went to college? Oh, you think you're so smart now? You forgot where you came from. So they're saying all these things, and it's like, it's a trauma that the black excellence community has of guilt. Feeling guilty that you didn't suffer, feeling guilty that your own parents suffered, your own grandparents suffered more than you. For those of you who come from generations of black people where, maybe you've heard the stories in your family of like the Jim Crow times, or you heard the stories of like family members being slaves or segregation or whatever, and you were the privileged one. You're the privileged one because you got more opportunities than what your parents got. So there's a pressure. Actually, I think black immigrants can relate to that as well, where maybe you're the first generation within the United States or something, or, there's this pressure that you feel to make it, not just for yourself, but also for your family. So it's almost this pressure that black excellence culture has where it's almost like, okay, failure is not an option. I'm not allowed to rest. So there's this hustle culture. That's a cultural difference you'll see. So I talked about Blackistan for like the first 30 minutes. Now we're talking about the black excellence culture and some of the limiting beliefs within black excellence culture. One of the limiting beliefs is if you don't help everybody that you can, or if you don't give everybody else money or like bring everybody else to the top with you, then you failed. And you're just a sellout and you're just selfish. And so it's almost like when you are going through college, when you're getting your doctorate, when you're getting the JD, when you're getting your MD, when you're starting the business, in the back of your mind, you're thinking, no, I have to make it because I'm the role model. So it's this automatic pressure of being a role model. Have you ever noticed that? When people put you on a pedestal, you are an automatic role model. Look at how they're treating the exotical space. They're trying to dox random women and say, oh, look, she changed her appearance, or she did this, or she's not as pretty as you think she is. So they're doing this because they know that the majority of the black community, if you are considered privileged, you become an automatic role model. And so a role model is supposed to act out the perfect lifestyle. They're supposed to be like this social actor. You're supposed to act out the perfect marriage or the perfect relationships. That's why they have those videos where it's like, oh, this is the preference to baby mama pipeline. So what they're doing is they're saying you did not live up to the role model standard that you were supposed to be in. You didn't become the wife. You became the baby mama. You didn't have a good, peaceful life that you're supposed to have as a multiracial woman. And so now I'm going to like expose you. I don't want you to be admired anymore because you made a mistake. So have you ever noticed that with black excellence culture, there are these black people that admire you, but also envy you at the same time because maybe you had more money, or there's something about your background or your phenotype or your racial mix or whatever. There's something about you to where you had access to special privileges that they did not have. So it's like, on the one hand, they want to live vicariously through you because maybe you're the rich black kid. You're the token. So they'll give you that trauma of calling you a token. And then they'll say things like, oh, well, you never fit in with the white people anyway. Your white side wants nothing to do with you if you're a mixed person. They'll say your white side wants nothing to do with you. So I've noticed that in Black excellence culture, one of the main traumas they'll try to put on you is instead of acknowledging your successes, they'll try to convince you that you are at the bottom of the top, if that makes sense. So for example, if you are a Black passing biracial, they will say, oh, well, you're not pretty. You're not at the top of the Black community. You're at the bottom of the mixed race community. So there's always this talking point of no matter how high you get in life, you're still at the bottom of somewhere else. And I'm thinking of Beyonce because with Beyonce, I remember they were like, oh, she's in the Illuminati. And then people are like, oh, well, she's at the bottom level of the Illuminati anyway. The real Illuminati is like the people at the top, the white people. I'm like, oh my God, no matter how successful you get, no matter how much talent you have, they're always going to create a hierarchy and you'll never be at the top of it. So with Black excellence culture, I feel like one of the flaws and one of the traumas of that culture is you feel like you're constantly on a hamster wheel. You feel like you're constantly having to perform. You have to perform femininity, perform wealth. You have to perform being educated. You have to perform intelligence. You have to perform multiculturalism. So no matter which culture you choose to center your life around, this is why I say that I like to cherry pick. I will pick and choose what parts of Black culture I like, and then I will reject the rest. So I will pick and choose the parts of Black excellence culture that I like, or the parts of quote unquote Blackistan that I like, and then anything that doesn't resonate with my internalized standard of social status or whatever, or my internalized standard of multiculturalism, if it doesn't align with how I want to live my life, I just reject it. Because no matter what background you come from, every background has flaws. Whether you came from Blackistan, whether you're from kind of this Black excellence culture, doesn't matter. Black excellence is not perfect either. Black excellence, first of all, a lot of people in the Black excellence culture struggle with living double lives. That's one thing. Have you ever noticed that? They will hide their sexuality. He'll be a whole gay man and he'll be a pastor at a church having like affairs with men or something. Or, they put on this facade of we are married, we're the perfect family, perfect suburban family. And then it's like they're cheating or they're abusing each other behind closed doors or something. Or, they have problems with alcohol, whatever it is. Or the wealthy thing. It's like, oh, I'm wealthy. Oh, but actually I'm committing fraud behind closed doors. So that's another aspect of Black excellence culture. Like that's another flaw within Black excellence culture. It's this feeling of having to put up a facade all the time. You're trying to uphold an image. You can't meet the standards, basically, of the image you're trying to uphold. So it's almost as if in Black excellence culture, you're working harder to uphold the image of wealth versus actually becoming wealthy. This is where you get those women that spend $10,000 on like a Birkin bag, but then maybe they have no savings account or something, or, they spend all their money on vacations and stuff, but then they don't have a 401k, they don't have a retirement, or, something happens and then they're on the verge of homelessness. So that's one of the cons of Black excellence culture. So the question is, if you want to pick and choose, like what aspects of what culture do you want to embrace? Because like I said, I will cherry pick and then I throw away the rest because I understand that one culture is not better than another. I don't put cultures on a hierarchy. That's a huge problem that pretty much everybody has, like across the board, regardless of their race. It's hierarchy thinking. And you guys know my theory on this. I actually believe that all insecurities and low self-esteem and inferiority complexes, all of that comes from hierarchy thinking in one way or another. So I don't put any culture on a pedestal. I don't put white culture on a pedestal. I don't even put multiculturalism on a pedestal. I don't think it's necessarily better. I think that it can help me to achieve my personal goals because I value multiculturalism. But there are some people who want to be monocultural, and that's okay. So for example, the people who want to be monoculturally Black, those are the people where maybe they will move out of the United States and they will go to an African country somewhere and they will actually go and live alongside like all black people and stuff because they want to be more monoculturally black. So two things can be true at the same time. You can succeed as a multicultural person. You can succeed as a monocultural person. It just depends on what your version of success is. It depends on what your version of happiness is. This is why I say it's all about having the internal locus of control and not allowing content creators to tell you how to live your life or that your lifestyle is wrong. Never take what a content creator says at face value, including me. Do not do that. Always go do your own research. Always ask yourself, like, okay, what is my best version of myself? What kind of lifestyle do I want to live? What kind of neighborhood do I want to live? Because that's another thing too. Have you ever noticed for Exoticals, a lot of monoracial or monocultural black people, they make fun of Exoticals that want to hang out with black people. It's like, okay, so if I don't hang out with black people, then I'm trying to be white. But if I do hang out with black people, I'm only doing it because I'm trying to outshine them and I'm colorist and I think I'm better than them. And I don't get attention in non-black spaces, so that's why I'm hanging out in the black community. So it's this talking point of damned if you do, damned if you don't. But guess what? There will always be Exoticals who enjoy being in the black neighborhoods, or they like living in Atlanta, or, you know, they like dating men who are black or dating women who are black. So it's like, we are not a monolith and we don't have to be. And I don't like when content creators or people in general, they try to create cultural norms and then they try to enforce those cultural norms onto you. Like, no, you have to follow this. This is what you should be doing. And it's like, no, everybody's not going to do that. Some people want to live in the hood. Do I want to live in the hood? No, but some people do want to live in the hood, or they want to purchase a house in the hood, and they're trying to change their culture. That's another thing. I cannot change an entire culture. I can influence a culture. I think that the exotical space, I mean, for us to be such a small space, we have really changed the face of Black YouTube. Let's just be honest. We really have. And that's okay if other people don't want to give us our flowers. But as time goes on and as this channel grows, people will see where all of these other content creators are getting their talking points from. It's from the exotical space. So that's fine. I don't mind that happening. But what do you ladies think? What limiting beliefs did you get from your Black side or from the Black community? What limiting beliefs did you have to give up in order to social climb, in order to be successful, in order to get rid of the inferiority complexes? Because remember, every culture, every race has inferiority complexes embedded within their culture. There's no such thing as a perfect culture. Oh, white people are perfect. No, there's no such thing. But what do you ladies think? Let me know in the comment section and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.